Ciao e bentornati, welcome back to Pillole D'Italiano. Today's episode number 88, is inspired by a common mistake that a lot of people make, mainly because they have these two expressions that are deceptively very similar, confused in their head. They don't necessarily know which one to use when, because the translation of these two expressions that I'm going to share in a second is pretty much the same in English. And it is how to say last week. Well, the English expression is last week. And you might think it's super easy. You know how to say week, settimana. What do you do about last though? In Italian, we actually have two words that mean last. We have two adjectives, scorso or scorsa. And then we have the adjective ultimo or ultima. I'm giving you the masculine and feminine version because those being adjectives, it means that settimana is feminine, so you should use scorsa or ultima, but if you're talking about last month, mese, which is masculine, then you will have to use scorso or ultimo. But let's stick to our original expression, which is last week. Then, okay, what are you supposed to do here? Should you say l'ultima settimana or la scorsa settimana or settimana scorsa? Because that scorso, scorsa is also tricky that way. You could place it before or after the noun. Your pick really depends on what you are truly trying to say. Are you trying to say that something happened last week? Or are you trying to say that the last week of February, for example, was, well, really intense for Ukraine? Something that happened last week, then you simply say settimana scorsa, such as in è successo settimana scorsa. It happened last week. Or ho incontrato Maria settimana scorsa. I met Maria last week. But if you want to say the last week, meaning the final week, such as in the example I gave you before, the final week of February, the last week of February, then we use the adjective ultimo, in this case ultima, and we would say l'ultima settimana di febbraio, the last week of February. Now let me show you in a scenario that will allow us to use both of these expressions back to back, the real difference. If we're talking about maybe a trip that I took, a trip that lasted several weeks, and I want to tell you that the last week of that trip I did something, I focused on a specific activity, and then I came back home last week, I would say, talking about my viaggio in Italia, my trip to Italy, ho passato l'ultima settimana con la mia famiglia. Ho passato l'ultima settimana con la mia famiglia. So ho passato l'ultima settimana, the final week, the last week, con la mia famiglia, with my family. E sono rientrata settimana scorsa. E sono rientrata settimana scorsa. And I re-entered, meaning I came back, last week. You see how l'ultima settimana and settimana scorsa here do not refer to the same week. The last week of my trip, which was more than a week ago, I did this, right? I spent time with my family. And last week is when I re-entered the country, when I came back to the US. This is an imaginary trip. I did not take one recently to Italy, unfortunately. Hopefully, though, this example made sense and showed you how settimana scorsa and l'ultima settimana are not the same thing in Italian. As usual, let me know, leaving a comment in the comment section below if you understood what I was talking about, if the distinction is clear, if you need more examples. Feel free to create sentences and test your understanding so that I can give you feedback. I truly hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel if you're new to it, so you're not going to miss any future episode. And I will see you soon in a week. Ciao, a presto!